Hi, this is TJ with Piano Clubhouse, and today I'm going to show you how to replace a broken key on a Yamaha MO 8 keyboard. These instructions can also apply to the Yamaha Motif 8 as well as the Motif XS 8. There's some slight differences with the XS 8, and I'll show you those in just a few minutes. But for the most part, this and the Motif 8 are almost identical, and I'll show you all the differences. I was playing on the keyboard last night, and my B key right here in the middle started getting stuck, and it would come up really slow as I pushed it. I push it down and it'd come up slowly. So I want to replace that key, but the thing is, I don't have spare keys laying around, and I don't have the time to call or order or place an order online to get a key, and I don't want to have to wait a week to get it. I need to get back to work on my keyboard today. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take this B off and replace it with this B that I have at the end of the keyboard down on this end. I don't hardly ever use this B, so for the time being, as a quick fix, I'm just going to swap this broke B with this working B over here. I'll swap them and get me some extra keys on hand for next time, and I'll be good to go. So let's go ahead and get started. You're going to need just two things. You're going to need a screwdriver that has a cross tip or Phillips head, and something thin that you can kind of stick in a crack. I'm using a butter knife. You can use a razor blade or something similar, but I think a butter knife does just fine. And you're going to need, of course, your keyboard on a table, and you want to make sure the table is wide enough that way, because we're going to be setting the keyboard up on its side, and but there's also going to be a point where we're going to be taking this lid and flipping it back. There are hinges that allow this to flip up like a car hood, and so it'll rotate over, and the hinges will keep it in place, but you just need to be sure your table is wide enough to accommodate the back side of it when it flips over. All right, so let's get started. Okay, so first thing, I'm going to move my drill and my knife out of the way, because I'm going to need all this workspace. So the screws that we're going to need to get to are on the bottom of the keyboard. So we're going to need to turn this up on its back side. And one thing I want you to notice, as I get to show you a side profile of this, there's kind of a slanted edge here, and then there's an edge here on the back. We want to, as we start to tilt this, it's going to naturally want to stop on that first edge, and you want to keep rotating it until it gets all the way up on that back edge, and it's almost going to kind of lean backwards a little bit. It's going to look a little unsteady. You can kind of see it's kind of tilting towards the back. So you want to be sure, if you want to feel safer, by putting some pillows or something here just in case it rolls all the way back, you probably might want to do that. I'm going to have a little ottoman here that I'm going to slide up right there that might help brace its fall in case it falls. But just be very careful as you sit it up. So it sits up just fine by itself. Just be very careful. So we're going to be removing pretty much all the screws on this wooden section. We don't need to remove the screws from these little feet here. There's 5 feet. We don't need to remove those, but we're going to move all these silver screws that are lining the edge. There, all up around here. We don't need to do these white silver ones that are on that frame. We don't need to do those at all. Okay, so we're going to remove those. Now, if you have an XS8, you're actually going to be removing a side panel here. You have a side, like a black frame that goes around the edge. You're going to remove this side as well as the other side over here. And then I think on the XS8, you also have, there you're going to see some screws that go all the way across the bottom. Like probably, I'm not sure if it's up here at the top or towards the bottom, but you'll see screws that go all the way across the bottom. So you want to unscrew all of those, as well as the screws on both sides. And that will kind of get us to the same point where we can begin to take the top off of the keyboard. Okay, so let's get started with the screws. All right, so I've got all the screws out. So at this point, I'm just going to leave the screws here so I don't lose them. So I'm going to lean this back forward. So now that we have the screws off, we should be able to grab both ends. The top lifts up again like the hood of a car, and it lifts up. The keys stay down while the sides and the back tilt up, and it's going to stop about right there. This is the key that I want to replace, and I want to replace it with this B that's here at the end. On the actual key, Yamaha does it to where it tells you the letter of the key. This says B, this says C, this says D, so it tells you the letters. And then there's a little arrow that's right next to it pointing to the left. You see the B and then the arrow to the left. So right there, that's in that little crack is where it's pointing to. Let me get my knife. In this crack is where I'm going to put my knife down in, and you can kind of feel it's kind of a lever that kind of pushes down. So that's what you're going to push, and as you're pushing that, you're going to use your other finger to lift up on this, and that will release the key. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so I'm putting the knife right in where the B is. I'm pushing down a little bit. I can feel it kind of bouncing back, so that's what I want to do is push it down. And then with my left hand or other hand, I'm going to just kind of stick my fingernail back behind it and pop it up, just like that. Okay, so it's free here, and so when you try to lift it a little bit, it's not moving, and I'm not going to do it any further because it will break. Let me tell you why. This other end that's down here is it's getting caught, or not caught, but it's meant to hold it. There's a notch, that's a groove that's keeping this end secured on this end. So in order to unhook it from that groove, from that notch, we need to take this key and slide it forward to let it get out of that groove. But we can't, because here's the end. There's no room. We need about a half of an inch more to get it to allow it to be released. So we need to move this whole keyboard back about an inch and a half to give us clearance to get this out. And so in order to do that, there is a line of screws on the back side of these keys. There's one, and they just line this brace all the way across. Here's a metal bracket all the way to right here. So all of those need to come out. There's one screw under this shielding here. There's probably some, these electronics here is being shielded by this. So we need to remove this metal shield and get the screw out from under here. So probably just these two, this screw and this screw. You don't need to worry about these three on top. Okay. So let's remove these screws, and then we'll shift the keyboard up, and then we'll see what's next. I'm going to go ahead and pop this other B while I have the knife in my hand. There we go. So we got two B's popped and ready to be swapped. They're just caught on the front end. So let's go ahead and use the screwdriver and remove these screws. I'm removing the heat shield now, but remember there's one more screw up under the heat shield that we need to get. Also, one thing to note is that these screws that I just pulled out from here are not the same size screws that I unscrewed from the bottom of the keyboard, so do not get them mixed up. These are longer that are securing the keyboard keys. These are longer than the ones on the bottom of the keyboard, so keep those two sets of screws separated. All right, so all the screws are gone now. I'm just gonna I want to show you one thing before I move the keys. Notice that again, these are the wires that are connecting your keyboard to the electronics. So this is probably the most important wires in the whole device, is what's taking your sound to the electronics. So we need to be sure, as this whole unit is going to be moving forward, we want to be sure that we're not going to pinch or cut these wires. So right now you see they're taped there. I'm going to just lift up that tape, because as I move this entire board forward, I don't want the wires to get caught on that tape or stuck. So I'm just going to lift that up. Okay. All right, so now we've got everything secured. I'm just gonna give it a slight lift just to be sure it's ready to move. Okay, so now I wanted you to see how close the keys are right now to this front. We're gonna need to move these, shift the whole set of keys back about an inch, maybe a half an inch. So I'm just going to just kind of slide it up. There's about a 3/4 of an inch gap there. I'm going to do the same thing on this other end. Just grab the brace and slide it back. Okay, so now we have a good enough gap here to where I can grab the key, slide it forward. That gets it unhooked from the little tab that's coming out, and now we have a key that's completely detached, and I'm ready to swap it out. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to do the same thing with this end. I'm going to slide it slightly forward, and it pops right out. Okay. One thing to notice is that on these keys, this tab part that's knocking on the bottom, it has some sort of lubricant on it. Almost feels like Vaseline. So just be cognizant of that. Also on the back of these keys, looks like there's a little bit of grease as well. So you may want to have gloves on, and be sure you don't set these on anything important, because they'll get greased up. Okay, so now I'm back at my original B key. And so before I put this new one back inside, I just want to show you this little square here is where that notch goes into. That's what we had to unseat it out of before we could pull it out. So when we get ready to put it back in, be sure you have it well in front of the other keys. You can see here it's kind of in front of them. We're going to go ahead and seat it down. Another thing, you want to be sure there's this like a metal tab that's sticking up. That needs to go up into this. So we want to hook that in, and then pull the keyboard forward, put the key forward a little bit so it's up here, because we want to be sure it's down far enough to get caught on that tab here that we talked about. Okay, so hook it up at the top, push it down, and then make sure it's forward, and as you're pushing it down, slide it back, and you'll feel it get caught into that tab. Now we're lined up. The only thing that's left is to push this in back down, and you'll hear it click in. No more sticking. Okay, I'm gonna do the same thing on the key that I replaced, and then we'll go in reverse and put everything back together. All right. So that's it. That's how you replace a key on a Yamaha MO 8. You can follow these same instructions for Motif 8. And I showed you the modified instructions on the Motif XS 8. Remember, all you're going to do for that one is just the sides is what you take off. And then there's a line of screws across the back that you do for the Motif XS 8. So hopefully that will save you a little bit of money. This has been TJ with Piano Clubhouse. Thanks for watching.